today is, and I'm posing the question to all of us here, is that, why is the West, why has the West been a silent colluder in these laws? And mainly the CIA, the United States, the superpowers, backed by Saudi Arabia, petrodollars and everything. And these laws, although they have been practiced in Saudi Arabia for a very long time, this is the Saudi Shari'a. This is not Muslim Shari'a. And I make the distinction between Saudi Shari'a and Muslim Shari'a because Muslim Shari'a over the years has evolved into a very tolerant and benevolent kind of a Sharia where women do have rights. But these are interpretations of the state of Saudi Arabia and which have been upheld. And exactly, thank you. Okay, so Sharia briefly is Islamic law, okay? Which is applied in a lot of Muslim countries. So these are issues that, and if you have any questions, just keep them for yourself, and then I can answer them towards the end. So I'm going to pass around these flyers to make it simple for everybody to understand what I'm talking about. And it's not very high tech. We're just going to be speaking from this poster. Can we pass these around, please? Okay, this Sharia is based on what came about in the late 70s, 1970. This is related to a geopolitical situation that emerged in the world, especially with the fall of the monarchy in Iran. The fall of the Shah of Iran in the late 1970s, 78, 79, thereabouts. Now, Iran was a major supplier of oil to the West and was at that time a big supporter of the West's oil interest. So and what happened in Iran was that the country was taken over by the Islamic clerics, by the mullahs. That panicked the West in the sense that it was a regime which was very hostile to the West. So as a result of that, immediately within a few years, so let's go back to what happened. So with the fall of Iran, the monarchy in Iran, and the takeover of the country by the Shia clerics, there was a panic in the West, that the whole of South Asia, including Afghanistan and Pakistan, is going to be taken over by the Soviets because the Soviets were already in Afghanistan in the early 70s. And so what we did, that by we I mean the Western powers, the superpowers, they cobbled together a union of Western countries, Western superpowers backed by Saudi Arabia, petrodollars from Saudi Arabia, bringing in people like Osama bin Laden and the Pakistani military, the Mujahideen, to go into Afghanistan and establish a very right-wing Sunni government which was based on Wahhabism. It was very foreign to the Islamic practices of South Asia at that time, because South Asia, including Afghanistan, were very secular states at that time, very secular societies, and we grew up in these societies. Faulia did, I did, until this thing happened. And what happened was that democratically elected governments were removed and military governments were brought in place, like bringing in the Mujahideen into Afghanistan, backed with the Saudi ideology of Wahhabism, which just takes into consideration a very literalist, very, very very, very canonical interpretation of the Quran, which can be used in all kinds of ways. And a lot of times these are stories. They're not coming from the Quran. These are stories narrated in the Quran talking about punishments in Moses' time or in the time of the pharaohs. So this handout that I've given out is an enactment. It's based on some anonymous poster that was painted at that time in the region in the 70s. And the cult that the Pakistani military, Saudi Arabia, backed by the CIA, brought about was, what was called the Nizam-e-Mustafa, in the name of the Prophet Muhammad. And this is what this poster is identifying. That, and I think it's so ironic. This poster is so ironic. On the top is La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, which is a shahada, which makes one a Muslim. It's the rite of passage to becoming a Muslim, which means there is no God but God, and Muhammad is his messenger. But this was the hijacking of the Shahada and the very basics of Islam, which do not coincide with the Prophet Muhammad's Islam. This was hijacked. And the way the state at that time in Afghanistan, in Pakistan hijacked it was, that the Quran is going to be the center of justice. It's very ironic. This poster is very ironic. And then you have all these men, using lashes and whips against citizens. On my right-hand side is the image of a very famous actress, Zeba, film star. She is portrayed as a prostitute, as a sex slave, and he says, the punishment for prostitution is whipping. And on the other side, on the left-hand side, is also again another famous star, Wahid Murad. He is depicted as a drunkard. And then you have this image from Aesop's fables, of the lion and the goat, dispensing justice. Now, I'm using this as a trope for today's presentation, that this is what the state did. It hijacked Islam through a military power, bringing in a general like General Ziaul Haq, and he had the support of the right-wing Islamic parties in the country, in Afghanistan and in Pakistan. It started from Saudi Arabia because of the Saudi petrodollars. The CIA were a party to it, and it filtered down to countries like India, to Afghanistan and Pakistan. But this thing has become widespread now. What we see of ISIL and all the terrorism is coming from the state-sponsored Islam, which I claim is not Muhammad's Islam. And this is not the Islam that's coming out of the Quran. So my rebuttal, and this was called the Shari'a, which was the Islamic Sharia. It was enforced by a military dictatorship. It was enforced by a monarchy in Saudi Arabia. And let me tell you, in Islam or in the Quran does not validate a monarchy. There is no place for a monarchy in Islam. So these are all violations of Islamic belief, of the Quran, and of Muhammad's practices. Had he wanted to, Muhammad could have declared himself a monarch. He did not. So my rebuttal to this so-called Islamic Sharia or Islamic law, which is being practiced in several countries now, officially or unofficially. Officially in countries like Afghanistan, in countries like Pakistan, and unofficially in countries like Bangladesh, Egypt, and others, which have not built in the so-called Sharia laws into their political system, But on a populist level, on an ordinary level, all these things are being practiced. You know, the use of blasphemy and the use of hudud laws. Now, hudud laws are also a part of the so-called Islamic Shari'a, which again is not in the Quran. It reduces a woman's testimony to one half of a man, and in case she is raped, she has to prove her innocence by bringing in 4 Muslim adult witnesses, or she is accused of zina or fornication. You can see, this so-called Sharia is directed against 50% of the population. Right away, disempowered these women. Now, my rebuttal to this is, we go back to look at Muhammad's constitution of Medina. It's not only the Quran that is part of Muhammad's practice, there's another document which is called the Medina Constitution. And nobody ever talks about it. Nobody talks about it. I found it out during my own research, and after I had finished writing this book, you know, I gave it as a project in my class, and we worked on it. Now, the Medina Constitution is a pact that Muhammad made with the Christian tribes, with the Jewish tribes in Medina, that they are all going to live in coexistence. They are going to respect each other's cultural practices. They're going to they're going to respect each other's faith, including the treatment of women. Different communities, you know, how they're going to interact with each other's women. I mean, I have differences on that with the Constitution of Medina. But you know, this was a pact which was created at that time in tribal Arabia. Why we are talking about these things is because this is a violation of human rights. The so-called Sharia of Islamic countries like Saudi Arabia, of Pakistan, of Afghanistan, the not written but practiced Sharia, you know, in which the mullahs have become the main perpetrators, are a violation of human rights. They are a violation of free speech. They are a violation of freedom of religion. They are a freedom of the right to exist in a state. And what has happened in this country is that only one brand of Islam, which is the Wahhabi brand of Islam, which is so foreign to even people like us, we've never seen this kind of Islam growing up ourselves, because we grew up in very secular Muslim societies. And this is a misunderstanding to believe that Islam is not, does not cooperate with secularism. Islam can coexist with secularism, and there have been great empires, Muslim empires and dynasties which have been secular, like the Mughals in India, or the Abbasites in Iraq, or the Umayyads in Spain, you know, creating one of the greatest Islamic civilizations because they were secular. They accepted the rights of their minorities to live with them. What we find in current situations in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Saudi Arabia, and most of South Asia is the complete denial of the right of minorities to exist as citizens in a state. It's not just minorities, it's free thinkers, it's even children. Children have been implicated in these Sharia laws. Primary among them are the blasphemy laws. You see, it's so easy to inflict a blasphemy charge on an individual, and I've got a copy of it here in my book. These laws are so nebulous. You can't talk about the Quran, you can't talk about the Prophet Muhammad, you cannot talk about the Prophet's wives, and each section of the blasphemy laws dictated by Saudi Arabia and their clerics has an epithet, etc. at the end. What does etc. mean? Etc. can mean anything. You can implicate anybody in blasphemy, and there is no bail for a person accused of blasphemy. Anybody can get up and accuse another person of blasphemy. It could be for, you know, accusing them of free speech or whatever they said. And these laws have been used to settle old scores, to settle land disputes, to settle professional jealousies and all these other issues, personal issues. And and systematically, countries like Afghanistan, even Egypt, Pakistan, have become police states. For instance, according to their interpretation of Islamic law or Shari'a, you cannot change your religion. Why can't you? There's a verse in the Quran, "Lakum dinakum waladi," to you your faith and to me mine. This is in one of the cults. Where is it coming from? People are free to choose their faith. Even as a Muslim, I think I have the right to declare myself a Christian or a Jew or whatever I want to. But these controllers of the laws, which is the state, and the state means a military state or a very bigoted state. This is for controlling the rights of citizenship. So these are a violation of human rights. I'm just going to share with you the story of a Christian woman in Pakistan, and she published this book. It's called Blasphemy, and her name is Asiya Bibi. She's a mother of 5, and she's on death row in Pakistan. And because of her case, the governor of the Punjab province, Salman Taseer, got assassinated. The Minister for Minority Affairs, Abbas, got assassinated because they were trying to repeal the blasphemy laws. And what was her fault? I read through this thing. She was a simple labor woman, uneducated. She was working in a berry field which is called falsa. They're as small as like your blueberries. It was summer, and she was picking falsas with other Muslim women in a feudal landlord's field. And so they all sat down, and she went to the well, and she took a cup of water to drink. And these other, Muslim women who claim to be Muslim, I told her that she couldn't drink from that cup. She said, "Why not?" And they said, "Because you're a Christian, you're a non-caste, and therefore we don't acknowledge you as somebody who can, share the same cup with us." So there was an argument. And they said things to her about Christ, that Christ was a bastard and all these other things, and she retaliated. And so there was a fight, and immediately she was framed in a blasphemy charge. And also, unfortunately, the whole village, it was a very small unknown village in the Punjab. The mullah or the religious cleric of the mosque had had a bone to pick with her because she had refused to take care of his buffalo and things like that. And next thing she finds is, they're all blaring out from the mosque speaker that she's an apostate, she's a blasphemer, and she's taken into custody and she's in jail. It's been several years since this thing happened, and the High Court of Pakistan has even refused to accept her petition, and the perpetrator who assassinated the governor because of her is sitting in jail. He has gotten away with everything. There's a death sentence on him, but he's a real rogue sitting in jail, directing other jailers to assassinate prisoners who come in on blasphemy charges. So he's become a big honcho in jail now. Instead of being executed for having killed the governor of the Punjab, and the court has said that he should be executed, he's a hero. And it says a lot for a country like Pakistan that even the community of attorneys have supported this man, Mumtaz Qadir. Nobody's doing anything about it, and nobody's touching him. I'm sharing this story with us all here to come to the fact that this why is all this happening, and why are people like Mumtaz Qadri getting away with it? And wherever he goes, he's garlanded and he's made a big hero of, because the state is a perpetrator in it. The state itself, the state of Pakistan, the state of Saudi Arabia, and one time General Musharraf wanted to do away with some of these blasphemy laws, and I guess, he got a phone call from Saudi Arabia or whatever, and it never happened. So, this is not coming from Muhammad's practices, because Muhammad would not have approved of anything like that. He was a compassionate man, and we don't see anything in Muhammad's practices or in his hadith, which is narratives about Muhammad saying that people should be killed or assassinated or imprisoned for that. And so this has gone on for a very long time, and I go back to repeat my my statement that a military government like General Ziaul Haq's was implanted in 1978-79 in Pakistan, and these Sharia laws came about with the blessing of the Islamic parties, which means that adventure in Afghanistan was actually a tiff between America and the Soviet Union. It was a tiff between communism and capitalism, in which countries like Afghanistan and the citizens of Pakistan were dragged, and they are the ones who are paying the price for it. And the superpowers are just looking the other way. But indirectly, it's come back to haunt us through 9/11. Because we let these people feel very powerful, people like Osama and others, for whatever they did in Afghanistan, and then we abandoned the scene and we walked away, not assuming any responsibility for it. And they had all the training, they had all the weapons, and the University of Nebraska had been paid $50 million to create these jihadi manuals and to uphold this Islamic law or the Shari'a. And they felt very abandoned, and we went to Eastern Europe and places, and I don't say that we deserve 9/11, it should not have happened, but we have to claim responsibility for it. For having given this ideology through a very bigoted Sharia, where intellectuals have no place, where free thinkers have no place, where women have no place, where children have no place, and we see something like that happen. The next thing is ISIL. Where is ISIL getting all its ammunition from? This dream of the caliphate, this dream of the Islamic Empire. Where is it coming from? It's coming from the same sources. Because when the superpowers went into Afghanistan, they made these warlords, including Osama, believe that they will have their caliphate. That once, the Soviet Union has been driven out of Afghanistan and communism is done away with, they're going to have their caliphate with their Islamic Shari'as, with their Islamic laws, in which women have no place, and where anybody can be implicated in blasphemy or a hudud ordinance, or for not believing in the dictates of the authoritarian leader, Boko Haram. These are all offsets of that kind of Sharia, which was put in, thinking that there are not going to be any ramifications for it, but we do see the ramifications. They're really widespread. And the bombing of the children's school in Peshawar, where 150 students were killed, and there was a big massacre. The Taliban, imbued with the same ideology, they came and said any any and every child who is studying in this school is a blasphemer and is an infidel, because identifying with the values of liberal democracy means for these people that you are a blasphemer. There is no room for any secularism in these laws. And that's why for today's presentation, I thought, why keep on blaming a country like Pakistan or Afghanistan and their governments and everything? They are post-colonial states, like, Fauzia's work indicates, and they're taking their dictates still from the empire. And it's in the interest of the empire, they thought it's in the interest of the empire, to pass on this kind of an Islamic law or let this kind of an Islamic law come about, but then we are seeing the consequences of it. I think I'm just going to stop here and take your questions.
They attacked her and they beat her until she died, and after that they burned her body.
Did you say wise men or white men?
Wide. No, I said wide.
They were wise.
They were wide. Yes, I'm sorry. Wide.
Okay.
Wide. Yes.
They were wise.
No. And so after that, there were like a huge demonstration against that. All the women and all the some men, they took part in the demonstration, saying that it shouldn't have happened. And my question was that what does Sharia say about women taking part in burying a body? Because women, I think women are not allowed to take part in like burying a body, because all those men killed that innocent woman. So the woman, as a protest, they buried her body. They took her coffin and they buried her body. They didn't allow any man to touch her body. I was
good for her. Good for her. Good for the women that they did it. The Sharia is Islamic law. Now, Muhammad did not live long enough to establish a Sharia. That's the argument I'm making in the book. The Sharia or Islamic law was oral for several centuries after Muhammad died, and they were following the practices, the customary practices of the region. There was no Sharia per se. The Sharia started to get documented under the Abbasides when it was written down and everything. Now, obviously, these were men who did it, and the Sharia has been the domain of men. But now, and because women were not educated, they were not allowed into the realm of education, it's only our generation that has been allowed, to enter the higher academy among the Muslim communities and able to write books, or maybe, a generation before that. The thing is, why can't women bury a body? My thing is, and I'm having a conversation with my family, that when I die, one of my women friends is going to lead my funeral prayers. Or whoever is available at that time. And I have some Wahhabi brothers-in-law, and they said, well, how do you justify that? They all live in St. Louis, Midwest, and things like that. I didn't get into an argument, and I thought to myself, because my daughter is a little afraid. I would want my daughter to do it, but she's so much under the family's influence that she would not be able to break through that kind of opinion. So I decided, okay, we are going to bury me where one of my friends can lead my funeral prayers. And lately in India, although women have not traditionally done it, women lawyers have been conducting Muslim wedding ceremonies, nikahs and things like that, attorneys and others, and the men have objected to it. But there is nothing in the Quran that forbids women from doing these things, or anything in Muhammad's practices that forbid these things. And pre-Islamic Arabia was matrilineal. There are two traditions in Islam. There is the tradition of his first wife Khadija, who belonged to the older matrilineal tradition. She was 15 years older than him, and she proposed marriage to him. That time, in 680 or whatever it is. The second tradition is the patriarchal tradition, when he married Aisha, who was much younger than him, 9 years old probably, when he was a 45-year-old man or whatever it is. But these matrilineal traditions have been systematically erased. It was the women who were the caretakers of the holy shrine of Kaaba in pre-Islamic Arabia. But that privilege was taken away from the women. So, the Sharia is a constantly evolving discourse. And there are all kinds of Sharias in Islam. There is the Saudi Sharia of Wahhabism, but then there is the very liberal Shafi'i and Hanafi Sharia or Islamic law. Depends on circumstances. So,
I have another question.
Sure.
What do you think is the punishment of a person that burned the Holy Quran? Because, this is in my mind, and I'm a Muslim.
So first I want to ask you, where have you seen people burning the Holy Quran?
Well, I haven't seen. This is a question because all those people, they killed that woman because they thought they accused her of burning the Holy Quran. That is why that I'm saying that is life of a person is more important,
than
or is like a book of religion. There are thousands of. I'm Muslim. This is how there are thousands of copies of Holy Quran around the world. Maybe even if she has burned it, maybe she had a reason for it. Maybe she was angry. Maybe.
But I think you've answered your own question. I don't think that people have a right to start attacking somebody and killing, doing what they did to this woman. If anything, it should go to a court of law and be adjudicated. But the point is, these are, you have to look at the message. This is what I got out of Shemeem's talk, Professor Bernie's talk, is that we have so many different ways of even looking at this body of laws called the Sharia, which themselves are internally contradictory, right? And as is the Hadith, which is the Hadith literature, which a lot of Islamic scholars turn to, because the Quran does not spell out things like that. It is more of a, it tells a lot of stories, there are some things in it, but a lot of this so-called Islamic Sharia relies on the Hadith, which is the sayings of the Prophet. But the sayings of the Prophet are internally contradictory.
Even the Quran, and if I may interrupt, Faudia, the Quran speaks to different situations at different times.
Quite right.
The Quran itself is contradictory.
This is like saying we insist on putting all the laws of the US of A today according to the St. James Bible. This is nonsense. You can't do that.
Some people do that, by the way.
But what I'm saying is it can't work. We have to use our heads. This is the 21st century. This doesn't make any sense at all. There is no way of going back to some perfect or prior origin, right? It doesn't work like that. So I think we have to use our common sense, and all of us, those of us who are here getting an education, first of all, learn a few things, and then go out and challenge people who, under the name of religion, try to tell you or sell you a bill of rights, which is nobody's bill of rights. It's just a lot of nonsense. We have to be brave enough to say this is nonsense. It doesn't hold up. Why are we going to kill people over a piece of paper? It doesn't make any sense.
Exactly, and the thing is, sometimes these things have to be burnt. Like, when I went back to Pakistan in my house in 2009, the place had been locked up for 9 years. A lot of my Quran copies had been eaten by termites. So I just, got my staff to dig a hole, and we just put it there and covered it, and we all swore, that we're not going to talk to anybody about it. What do you do then? Either you bury it, or you burn it, or, one of the suggested ways is you throw it down in the stream. But what if there's no stream around? Where are you going to go looking for a stream?
Right.
And when I give Quranic handouts to my students here, I just tell them, listen, if you're going to be throwing it out, just put it in a recycling bin. That's it.
We have a question.
I have a question that I want to make a comment. I think we have identified the root cause of the world problems, looking for the answers in the books that are totally outdated. That is the root problem. Okay? Just keep that in mind. Question I had for you was that is there a word for blasphemy in Urdu or Farsi?
Yes.
What is that?
Tohine Rasalat. Tohine Rasalat
It's a
means
phrase.
That's a
insult.
Persian word though.
Yeah, Tohine Rasalat means insulting the Prophet, and Tohine Quran would mean
Okay.
insulting the Quran.
The reason I asked that, and I think
And there are other words also which
yeah,
are
you
not
guys
coming
should
to me.
understand this. I'm from India. I'm Hindu. In India, all the words came from Sanskrit.
Yeah,
In Sanskrit language, there is no such word as blasphemy. There is no such word.
interesting.
Okay? There is no such word. So the reason I'm telling you this, you met Professor Benson today.
Mm-hmm.
So many years ago, I used to have a interdisciplinary Janet class. So where he used to ask me to give a talk on Gandhiji, Mahatma Gandhi. I did that many years ago. Then one year, during a question and answers, I brought in this blasphemy word.
Mm.
Okay? And I told them that the two most disturbing thoughts in the world are the concept of blasphemy, because it basically goes against the freedom of thought. Okay? And the other one is, and this is where many of you will not agree with me, because in Hinduism, in India, there is no such concept of conversion. And the second thing is this religious conversion concept.
It's what, I'm sorry?
Religious conversion. Those two concepts are the most dangerous concept in the world. Guess what happened after that talk? I was not called back. That year, a student voted not to invite me back because somehow they felt offended. by
Where
my
was this?
Yeah.
Here, right?
Oh,
Right. So,
what?
now you know, I'm a professor in business school. I think about a lot of these things. I really appreciate your courage, and I wish there will be more Muslim Islamic scholars who will come out and talk these
And
kind
to
of
talk
things.
There are actually a lot. I
There
mean,
is.
there are. But one thing I do want to say in a sort of acknowledgement of Shemeem's courage is that she faced, charges of blasphemy.
By the mullahs,
Yeah.
my university.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, after I came back from the United States and I came back to my department, they had removed the professorship from the department because they were threatened with my American PhD, and for the 8 years I was there was a constant battle. There was a constant battle about one thing or another. And I told a friend in the admin, I said, it seems like, this is a PhD in contention, I'm going through so much. And I think then they were trying to follow me because I had grown up in a very secular Pakistan, and Pakistan, there are pockets in Pakistan which are still very secular. This is again a misrepresentation of the media. And so I was going to my, embassy parties and my other parties and things, and they wanted to frame me in zina or fornication to begin with, as a woman living alone on herself. It's very threatening for the patriarchy, and especially for these mullahs, to see a woman live by herself, all alone with no man in her house. It's too much of a threatening paradigm. So I was followed by the inter-services intelligence and, by all these intelligence agencies and things. And one time, 2 or 3 times, I mentioned in the book also, I don't know what they were trying to get to me, shoot me or something like that, and I would just say, I think out of sheer exasperation, they just said, all right, let's frame her as a blasphemy. And it might have happened through a junior woman colleague of mine who regrets it now. We were just talking about Muhammad's life, and we were just discussing things about him and the Shia-Sunni conflict. And so naturally, all these issues come up. There are issues of who his successor was, and Ali, and all these things. And